Good morning and welcome to StudyIQ. I am Prashant Mavani. I hope you all are doing good, my dear friends. Today is 8th January 2020, and on our table we have some interesting articles. The first one is about Australian bushfire. This article is talking about, opportunities that are there for India and Australia. If we can work together, then there are lots of things that we can change together. Then this article is about CDS, that is Chief of Defence Staff. The writer of this article is expressing some negative points about CDS, and it is important for us to know about the demerits of CDS as well. In future, we may encounter an article that is talking about merits of CDS, so this article is important in that context. We have one article on Trump adventurism. One article is about radicalization, like why we need to be a bit diligent when we categorize different crimes. This article is talking about democracy. It's talking about political system of our country. The end portion of this article is inclined towards a particular political ideology, so we are not going to take that thing on board, but of course we are going to go through some important points that we find, or important lines and facts that we find in this particular article. As far as these two editorials are concerned, right, you can skip them. If you don't have that much time, then you can definitely skip them. They are not that important. The first one is this one, a battle over welfare. So it's about Delhi polls. Yesterday we were talking about this thing that on 8th February 2020, Delhi is going through election. On 11th, results will be out. So this article is about politics, what AAP is going to do, what BJP is going to do, and things like that. And then you have this article. Let me remove this bit here. It's called None for Four. So it's about ICC is pondering over one thing, that from 2023 test matches should be played, or they should be limited to 4 days. At present, test matches are played for 5 days, isn't it? So that's what this article is all about. So if you don't have time, then you can skip these two articles. Others I'm going to take you through. Before we move on, dear friends, our pen drive and tablet courses are available for various different examinations, right? You can check out StudyIQ.com to find out more about it. If you have any question, queries or doubts related with it, then you can give us a call on the numbers that you can see on your screen. To download the PDF of today's lecture, do visit my FB page. You can follow me on FB, and this is my Telegram channel on which I will share the PDF of this lecture. And please make sure that you share this lecture with other students. If you have studied or learned something from today's discussion, then don't forget to hit the like button and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. So there was a writer called David Horne, and David Horne described Australia as the lucky country. Now, why he described Australia as a lucky country? Because Australia has huge amount of natural resources. It has a very sunny days as well as good weather, and it is also isolated a bit away from this whole turbulence of the world. So before we talk about this article amidst a tragedy and opportunity, let me take you through some important things about. Let's go through Australia, right? We are going to talk about some geographical thing. So here on the northern side, you can see Timor Sea, you can see Arafura Sea, and then here you have Great Barrier Reef. It's quite famous for its biodiversity. It's also many times you find it in news because of this encroachment or destruction that is taking place in this Great Barrier Reef. Then you have Coral Sea here. So basically this Coral Sea, or the waters of the Coral Seas, are predominantly water of Pacific Ocean, isn't it? And on here, this side, you have Indian Ocean. So we can say that the western part of Australia is sharing its border with Indian Ocean. The eastern part of Australia is sharing its border with Pacific Ocean, right? This is eastern part here, and this is Pacific Ocean here. So from Indo-Pacific point of view, right, I'm talking about some geopolitical things. So Indo-Pacific point of view, Australia is a very important player. You'd be aware about this thing as well, that Australia is part of Quad. Also in Quad you have India, USA, Australia and Japan, and it's about controlling China, isn't it? So these are a few things, and let me take you through some more geographical things. So you will observe one thing. If you observe big cities, you will find most of the cities of Australia, right? The famous one, the big ones like Brisbane, Sydney. Then you have Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, Darwin. All these cities are coastal cities. The capital of Australia is Canberra, and then you have this part here. It's called Tasmania. It's not Tanzania, so don't confuse it with that. And then you have some other countries that are not that far from Australia. You have Indonesia, parts of Indonesia. You have Papua New Guinea, and New Zealand is not visible on this particular map, but New Zealand is not far, as you can see here. This tiny portion here, this is New Zealand, right? So enough about geography. And last point, right? I don't want to miss this. Tropic of Capricorn passes through. You can say roughly it divides Australia into two parts, right? Tropic of Capricorn. Remember this thing I'm talking about. 23 degree 5 south. Southern line, sorry. This is south. Northern one is Tropic of Cancer, of course. Now, these are some recent photographs of different parts of Australia. As you can see here, people are not at all happy because the state through which their cities, their towns are going through, as you can see here. This is just one picture here. There are so many horrible pictures out there. If you just Google Australia bushfire, then you will find so many horrible pictures. Now see here, this picture is also quite famous. I'm sure you might have seen this one somewhere. I saw it on WhatsApp as well. This tiny picture in which you can see a kangaroo is running for its life. And see here, these are the places where you find bushfire. See this one as well. Let me zoom it up for you so we can get a proper idea. I'm sure you might have watched some visuals on news channels or maybe on YouTube videos. Now let us understand one thing, right? Australia is, where do you find Australia? In southern hemisphere. So this is 0 degree, it's called equator, and then you have this northern, this portion here is north, and this portion here is south. So Australia is in southern hemisphere. At present, countries of northern hemisphere, we are going through winter time and they are going through summertime. So remember, the Christmas celebration or Christmas in Australia falls in summertime. Now, this time Australia is going through a sort of severe drought situation because of this Indian Ocean dipole, and this is one of the main geographical reason why Australia is going through this drought, or why we are seeing this sort of bushfire in Australia. It's quite common in our country as well. During summer times, we find various different jungles of Karnataka, Uttarakhand. We find this sort of news items that bushfire or forest fires are quite common in our country as well. Now, what is Indian Ocean dipole? As you can see here on your screen, you have this water here is Indian Ocean water, isn't it? It's sharing its border with Africa, Australia, and Asia. Right. So what happens in Indian Ocean dipole is one portion of Indian Ocean's water is warmer than average, and one portion is cooler than average, and particularly the western portion is warmer and the eastern portion is cooler. When we have this situation, it is called positive phase. As you can see here, I have one more photograph here for you guys. So this is warmer water, this is colder water. So when we have this situation, what happens is Australia will get a sort of drought, and this portion here, this African countries, they will go through excessive rainfall. At present, if you follow some international news, you will find that so many African countries are going through this flood situation. They are facing flood, and here we have severe drought. This positive phase is beneficial for Indian rains as well, and here you find things are very dry, and because of this thing, this is one of the main reasons why Australia is going through this bushfire. Now, with Indian Ocean dipole, you have a negative phase as well. In negative phase, what happens is situation will reverse. Over here, you will find warm water. Over here, you will find cooler water. So, in that situation, what happens is you get heavy rains here and you get a drought situation here. So, I hope this is easy for you to understand. It should be clear. Indian Ocean dipole. It's a very important concept of geography, and you don't have any fixed dates or time period for this. It's very erratic, this Indian Ocean dipole. So you'd be aware about this El Nino and La Nina, and this one is Indian Ocean dipole that takes place in Indian Ocean. Right. So once we are clear with this thing, the reason behind this bushfire, let's move on and let's go through some important facts. Now, wildfire has burned 12 million hectares of land. And when you have this much amount of land burning, of course, you are going to see smoke, right? And smoke rises up. And a few days ago, there was this WhatsApp, message. I'm not just following WhatsApp messages. I'm referring WhatsApp because it's quite common. Many of you would be accessing news via WhatsApp. It's not always healthy. But if you go through some international news channels, then you will find like BBC and other that there was a sort of cheer because of this downburst or because of rainfall. So it's good, but we have to understand this thing that when you have this much amount of smoke going up in the sky, then what happens is at stage number 3, this clouds, this smoke will turn into this clouds, and clouds, this type of clouds are called pyrocumulonimbus clouds, and they can bring rain. It's good for this portion maybe, but it will also bring lightning. Thunderstorm can also develop, and it can bring more lightning, and it can create fires in new portions as well. So this rain is good, but because of this smoke, because of this pyrocumulonimbus clouds, things may turn a bit more severe as well. Richard Flangen said that Australia today is ground zero for climate catastrophe, and this is right as well. And I would blame Australia as well, because if you go through Australia and the record of Australia when it comes to managing biodiversity, it's not that good. Australia is a developed country, but it has, to be honest, as far as I know, it has not looked after its environment that well. I'll give you, as I told you earlier on as well, you'd be aware of this Great Barrier Reef. And I have a question for you. Can you give me the name of an Indian company that has won a contract, or it's a company that is now established in Australia as well? It is associated with coal business, and it's going to be, or it is one of the biggest company in the world in terms of production. So can you give me the name of that company? So you have so many examples, right? Australia not paying that much attention to this environmental protection. Richard Flangen, he's right that Australia is ground zero. Ground zero is a place where basically a bomb is dropped. So it's a very, you can say, dangerous place, Australia at present, when it comes to climate catastrophe. So of course, after this bushfire, things are, people are going to talk about global warming. Climate change will be a very hot topic in Australia. Fossil fuels, their usage, their cut down, all these things will intensify. And a campaign against fossil fuel will also take place. Export of coal may come under severe scrutiny and things. And you can see here you can see this bits here, all these things, right? This small chunk of colors, this green and yellow. These are patches of black carbon. Because of this plumes, this bushfire, 7,000 miles, far 7,000 miles as well, you can see this black carbon coming out from Australia, and this black carbon is harmful for human as well as it contributes to climate change too. So in this article, the main theme is that, or the main message is that both countries, India and Australia, can work together. They have good people-to-people relationship when both these countries, when they hold each other's hand. There are so many opportunities out there that they can work together for, like water management is there, skill development, higher education, maritime, as well as cyber security, counter-terrorism. There are so many opportunities out there, and together both nations can, because they are part of this International Solar Alliance, they can strengthen International Solar Alliance. They can do research and develop some alternative green fuels, and they can take a leadership position when it comes to climate change, because both the nations, right? India is also a country that is very vulnerable to climate change. In 1955, Australian Prime Minister, then Australian Prime Minister Robert Menzies, was not that much aware about Asian countries. When I say not aware, I mean to say he was not, as a country, Australia was not inclined or interested in Asia or African nations. But things have changed, and later on, even Menzies confessed that he did not, or his country did not understand India. But today, India and Australia, they share a very good people-to-people relationship, right? We are working on so many things. We play cricket together. We have, student exchange program. We do research together. We are doing joint military exercises. Now, both nations are, very vulnerable to climate change and this ripple effect of climate change. So together, both nations can come, work together as a partners, and they can play a very, you can say, important or significant role in making our planet a bit more safer for everyone. Unfortunately, the current Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, he will not be able to visit or to speak at this or take part in this Raisina dialogue that is going to take place in a few days because of this bushfire that is going on in Australia. Moving on to next item, it's about CDS. Now, we'll start with a bit of history. World War II. At that point of time, there was one common enemy, Hitler, and various different countries. I'm not going into the history of World War II. I'll be very brief here. You'd be aware about that in World War II. In one team, you had UK, you had USA, and it's quite strange even to imagine that at that point of time, United States and Soviet Union, they worked together under one umbrella. So you can imagine when you have so many different countries, their navies, their air forces, their armies coming together and fighting against one enemy. So they need a sort of coordination, isn't it? To make sure that whatever they are putting or bringing on table can be utilized up to the max. So unified command was something that was absolutely necessary at that point of time. And after that, we know that the world was divided into two ideological blocks. I'm talking about Cold War. But today we are not going deep into the Cold War. We are going we'll move ahead to this CDS, that is Chief of Defense Staff. So on 24th December, now basically let me tell you why we were talking about this unified command, because it's important for us to understand why unified command was important at that point of time. Now, a few weeks ago, or maybe 1.5 weeks ago, on 24th December 2019, to be precise, Press Information Bureau news item released one thing that it's about Chief of Defense Staff, like who is Chief of Defense Staff, responsibility and other things. So first point is the Chief of Defense Staff is the head of DMA, that is Department of Military Affairs. Who is the head? CDS is the head of DMA. Second important point, CDS is permanent chairman of Chiefs of Staff Committee. This is second point that you have to understand. And the third one, and the most important word here, is tri-services. Chief of Defense Staff is Principal Military Advisor to the Raksha Mantri or the Defense Minister on all tri-services matters. Now, why I am saying that this word is important, because when it comes to tri-services, defense service, tri-services, this CDS is going to be the Principal Military Advisor. But when it comes to individual services, like let's say if there is something important for just the Navy or thing that is concerned just with Navy or Air Force or Army, then the respective chief will be the main advisor to Raksha Mantri. When it comes to tri-services, right, then CDS will take over. Now, CDS will not exercise any military command. He will just act as a sort of advisor. And this has been decided to make sure that the advice that is coming from CDS is impartial. If CDS is basically, if he or she becomes part of a force, right, then that's going to be a bit biased, isn't it? He's neither on the civilian side, he's neither on the military side. He's basically like a bridge, so he has to act impartial when it comes to his his or her advices. So these are a few points that we find in this Press Information Bureau release. Now we'll talk about why this CDS is a negative thing, or negative points about CDS, or you can say demerits of CDS. Now, first point, because he is going to be secretary of DMA, there would be an implied subordination of the three service chiefs to the CDS, because CDS is going to be the main person of this DMA. The other chiefs of this respective services, Army, Navy and Air Force, they are automatically going to become a sort of subordinate, a deputy of this CDS. So CDS will have a better position here if we go through the terms and conditions of CDS. The second thing is encroachment upon the domain of service chiefs, right? As an army chief, you know everything about army. As a naval chief, you know everything about navy, or you are expert and you are the most senior, most experienced. But then as well, CDS can throw his or her weight, or he or she can encroach the domain of service chiefs. So this is a negative point. Third point is CDS would outrank the three service chiefs, even though theoretically all are 4-star. On paper, all these four personnel, right? Army, Navy, Air Force chief, as well as CDS, they all are 4-star. But because the position of this CDS is a bit higher when it comes to, he is playing as a bridge, so he will outrank. Eventually we'll see that he will become a sort of de facto powerful person when you compare this four personnel or four posts. Moreover, the advice to CDS could override the advice of respective services. Like, let's say here in this case, as I already told you, that exclusively when it comes to Air Force, if Air Force Chief is talking about some important issue with Raksha Mantri, and if CDS, what happens when CDS is not happy about that thing? So there is lack of clarification on this thing. So in this article, it is said that CDS may override, and he or she will become more powerful. The reporting structure of three services is basically to Defense Minister. But now they have to go through CDS. Normally what happens in theory is that you have a defense minister, or any minister is basically the boss of that particular department. But on reality, what you have to do is you have to convince the secretary. If secretary is once convinced, or if he or she is okay with the plan that you are presenting or offering, then he or she will convince the defense minister that it's okay to go ahead with this thing. So now if you want to make any changes with your services, let's say Navy wants to change something, or they are asking for something, then they have to convince a defense secretary, and that is this CDS. If CDS is okay with it, then defense minister will go ahead with it. So one more layer, you can say. So since the DMA would exercise control over the three services, it virtually makes the CDS the supreme commander of the Indian Armed Forces. That's what this article is all about. So I'm sure you have understood some negative points or disadvantage or demerits of CDS. In future, if we find some positive article, then we'll go through it, and then we will try to weigh this whole thing, or whether we need CDS or not, or the benefits or advantages and disadvantages of having a CDS. Then we have this domestic perils of Trump's adventurism abroad. Yesterday we have gone through history and current situation. Now you know it very well what happened in Baghdad with Soleimani, and now the things are going to be a bit bad in West Asia, as well as beyond West Asia as well. Iran is not going to sit down. Iran is going to take revenge. That's what Iran has said. And Mr. Trump's action has endangered American persons, assets, military, as well as civilians who are in this part of the world, or beyond as well. Now, the most important thing that we have to understand here is that I was talking about this 1955 Australian Prime Minister, isn't it? That at that point of time, he was talking about that he was not aware about countries like India, or when I say not aware, he was not that much interested. But today, we need each other, isn't it? In the same way, what happened at that point of time, we can find the trails of those things even today. So, if right now, if we find these countries like Iran, this USA, right? They are not following rules and regulations of the world, right? They are breaching world's rules and regulations. They are declaring war, and they are basically on a verge of a war in 21st century. So this is if you sit down today, we are living, as far as humankind is concerned, we are living in one of the most, you can say, the best ever phase in human history. We have everything. What we need to do is we have to use our sensibility, and we have to make sure that we take this earth, and next generation should also be able to enjoy life on this planet. But here we have some politicians, their vested interest, and they are going ahead with war and things like that, which is not good for any country, right? And Mr. Trump, or I would say America, it's not the first time America has breached international laws. And when it comes to other countries, when they are not following rules and regulation, then America is a strict monitor, right? It will become, all of a sudden, it will become a global cop. But when it comes to their own country, they are not that much, rule, and I would say they are not that much obedient. Now, Iran as well is going to break rules, and this is not healthy for the world. In future, this is the thing that will be replicated in future, right? They will take lessons from the past, and then they will do the same thing, and that's not good for the world. Our world can survive if each and everyone is sincerely following rules and regulations that are laid down by United Nations. Trump has driven a deeper wedge between political constituents at home as well. In America as well, you have this Republican and Democrats. They are not happy. There are the oppositions, right? They are not happy with Mr. Trump's action. There is a 1973 War Powers Act, as per which a president has to inform Congress within 48 hours of introducing military forces into armed conflict abroad. So Mr. Trump has not done that. And this act also says that if, say for example, if president is engaging armed forces for a mission or for an action that will take more than 60 days, then he or she should take an approval from Congress or the Parliament. Now, it's not that USA is, or people of USA are inclined for a war. There are so many people out there in USA, they are protesting against this hostility. They don't want to see war, they want peace. So I hope leaders from both sides will understand this thing, and let's hope that we don't see a war at this point of time in the world, and in future as well. We don't want a war on this world. The road to radicalization. Now, whenever there are acts of violence, there is an urgency to label or sticker them as acts of terror or terrorism. Like petty attacks are also referred as lone wolf attacks. In this particular article, we have 3 examples. The first one is London Bridge example of UK. Then you have shootings in Joint Base, Pearl Harbor, Hickam. And then you have this last one, Pensacola Naval Air Station in USA. Both these places are in USA, right? This one, and one example is of UK. So what happened in UK, there is a person called Usman Khan. He was behind the bars for 8 years for supporting terrorism and terror related activities, and he was released from prison. And after a short period of time, what he did, he started stabbing people on London Bridge. So it's not a lone wolf. Can we call it a lone wolf attack? The thing is, no, we have missed the thing. He's not lone wolf. The reason why he's not a lone wolf is because there are so many people out there. Physically, they are not closer to Usman, but he was in touch with them via internet. So there is a whole system working, layers are working. So he's not a lone wolf. So to categorize Usman Khan as a lone wolf won't be right. Then you have this case here, Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam shooting. Here it was a pure homicide. It was a murder. And the last one, Pensacola Naval Air Station. This one is something that you can call a lone wolf attack, because the person who was, he was not happy with America. As per that particular individual, he believed that USA was not treating Muslims very well. So he wanted to take a sort of revenge. So he joins the force, and then he shoots American people. So that is something that you can call lone wolf. So we have to be very diligent. We have to be very careful. We have to categorize violence, because if we categorize them properly, then only we can create some strategies to stop them in future. Last article of the day, it is about retrieving ideas of democracy and nation. So there were complex questions when we just got independence, or just before that, and after partition as well, that what sort of nation we are and what kind of nation we should be. So there were people talking about Swaraj, there were socialists, communists, there were Gandhians as well. Then you have this V.D. Savarkar. His idea was that it should be a sort of Hindu Rashtra. There was a Maulana Maududi. He was for theodemocracy. And there were some people who were basically watching the country from caste point of view and things like that. So finally, what we did as a country, we embraced constitutional democracy, and we decided that we are going to have periodic elections. So because of this constitutional democracy and periodic elections, the ball basically came into motion. When we got independence, at that point of time, few elites were running the nation, but then later on, we have witnessed, many people from poor background, from not that good background. When I say not that good, I mean to say I'm talking about that they were not having that many advantages. But then as well, they have reached at a very powerful position, and they have created, or they have left their mark in the maturity of our democracy. So because of this constitutional democracy and periodic elections, right, we were able to achieve, or these are two main wheels that were in motion, and because of this, we achieved what we have achieved today. But this article, as I told you, it is inclined towards one particular political ideology. So this article is talking about that the current government, because of this CAA, the NRC, the way things are going on, it is this article is saying that the government is doing all those sort of things that is basically forcing us, so that is creating a situation where we have to again ask ourselves that what sort of nation we have become now, and what we should do. So again, I'll leave it on you guys to decide whether we are going in a wrong direction or we are in right direction. Right, it's pure. This article is it has a political touch, right? So I don't want to create an impression that here we are supporting any particular political party. I've left it on you guys to use your own thoughts to decide. News items, we have few yet important news items. 4 Nirbhaya case convicts to be hanged on 22nd January. So they have few options. They can file a curative petition in Supreme Court. They can seek pardon from the president. They have Delhi prison rules is mentioned here. Then government invites diplomats to visit Kashmir. So we have 20 ambassadors and senior diplomats from European Union. We have basically invited them, Gulf countries, and then you have UNSC members and UNHRC and others. They are going to visit Kashmir. Government projects slower GDP growth, around 5% for this year, and charges against a student leader, but none held for JNU attacks. That's what we find in today's newspaper. Forget about Arvind Kejriwal, because if I say anything about Arvind Kejriwal, then it may sound that I'm supporting a particular political party, because election dates are out. But here, I'm not talking about his statement. I'm talking about this Nirbhaya case. It took 7 years to reach to this point of Nirbhaya case, and it should not this long. It should be 6 months, isn't it? But for that, we have to change the culture. First of all, we have to create a culture, a society where women they are properly treated. They are not disrespected or humiliated, or crimes are not committed against them. First thing. Second thing, when it comes to law enforcement, even small crimes should be taken seriously. Then only we will be able to create that culture. Today what happens is a sort of a physical brawl or a sort of fight on the road rage is not handled properly by police, and this creates a sort of a sense of like criminals, they will get motivation from this thing, that nothing will happen to them if they do a sort of crime. So if we are very strict as well as impartial when it comes to crime, then we can create that culture. That's what I believe. So that's everything in today's discussion, dear friends. Thank you very much for your love and for your support. I'm really touched, and I'll be with you guys for a very long period of time now. So don't worry about it. And this lecture will come on regular basis from Monday to Saturday in 2 languages. One lecture will be in English and one lecture will be in Hindi. So do inform your friends also about it. Thank you very much. God bless you all. Jai Hind.